All right, be tying the second volume of my fly tying series of a fly a day while my wife is away. Paige's in Texas. Just trying to do some winding down at the end of the day. So tying some flies, and I thought, why not tie a fly every night while she's gone? So a fly a day while the wife is away. So this fly, first one was a black woolly worm, or a version as close as I could get it. Tonight is going to be a gray hackle peacock, which is it's a wet fly, which means that it won't sit on top of the water. It'll sink down. So when I tie my flies, I try to be as descriptive as I can, because I'm hoping and assuming that when people are watching these fly tying videos, that perhaps they've never heard of fly tying before or seen fly tying video. They certainly may not know all the terms. Not that I know all of them, or utilize them the way I should. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll try to be as explanatory as I can. So to start off with, I'm using an eagle claw hook. Now, I don't use fly tying hooks all the time. Right now I'm out of them, and I have these hooks. So this is what I use, and actually 90% of my fly tying videos have been on these eagle claw hooks. So these packs, you can get them at Walmart, any fishing supply, whatever. They have 3 different sizes: the large, the medium, and the small. And this one I've chosen the medium size. I was going to do the small, but it just looked a little too small. The weight of the hooks is a little bit heavy, which is good for these wet flies because they'll sink. The only problem is that these have a pretty hefty barb there, and then these are bait holders, so they have a barb here, 2 barbs. So what I do when I start with these is I take the hook. And these also have a weird bend to them, a sideways bend. You can kind of see a hint of it still, but I've straightened it out. I just straightened it out in my vise. And then I've pressed down the barbs so they don't stick up. And then this barb as well, because many fly fishermen, they choose to use barbless hooks, because most of the time they're putting the fish back. So it kind of depends on if you want to keep the fish or not. This just helps the hook set a little better. It just allows it to pop out, so you can put the fish back without hurting them more than putting a hook through their lip. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This is I'm using black fly tying thread. This is a unithread, 200 it's 200 yards of 8/0 black unithread. There's different kinds of thread you can use. Basically, what I buy is unithread. So different threads do different things. I'm also going to be using Peacock Hurl. This is called Peacock Hurl. So if you have peacock feather, the one that has the eye at the top with all the stuff coming off, this is down below that on the shaft of the feather, and you can buy it in a package of them strung together. I've also got this little grizzly feather. I call it grizzly when it's striped. This is off of an old fly. This is going to be a wet fly. I've got these guys here, but those will stand out straight. I don't want them to stand out straight. I want them to lay down more, and hopefully that soft feather will do that. It's just a couple of turns. I've also got a red feather here. I'm going to use just a little bit of this portion down here where it's not really feathery, as part of the tail piece. And then I've got some tinsel. This is gold on one side, it's silver on the other, and it's very much like what a lot of Christmas decorations are made from, just kind of a foil. So I'm going to start with a layer of thread. Often hooks are really slick, so you put a layer of thread down on them, first of all, to attach the threads you can tie on other things, but also the thread base makes the hook shank rough and makes it so that you can more easily tie things on without them slipping off. Some fly tying materials are really slick, and when you pull on them or when a fish grabs them and pulls, they'll just pull out. But if you've got a good thread base, something to tie to, gives it something to hold on to and makes it not come apart. Makes it so that if you ever want to reuse the hook, you actually have to cut the threads to get everything off of there. So I'll start this one off with, I need to go a little bit further down. I'll go down a little bit past the bend, or to the bend. So right there. I'm going to tie in a piece of this tinsel and get it off the bobbin. I may have never used this actual roll. That may be a lie. But I've got 2 rolls of this, and that was pretty hard to get undone. So, who knows? So this, like I said before, this has 2 sides. This has a silver side and a gold side. So you can just, when you tie it on, you just lay it the way you want it to be. The fly sample that I have, or the picture that I have, shows this as being silver. So I'm just going to tie that on. And I'll go this way with it. And this is just a few turns on the bottom of the hook, on the end of the hook, or at the bend. Well, sometimes I talk before I think and don't say the right stuff. That's okay. Because at least my flies turn out mediocre. Right. Okay. That was less than perfect. There, I tightened it up. Yeah, so all I did there was just tie that on and make a couple of wraps, and then I'm going to snip this off, the extra. There we go. Okay, and then next step is the little red tail that goes on this. So got this red feather. I'm going to just take some barbs here, peel them off. A little bit more than I wanted. It doesn't have to be a very dominant feature on the fly, just enough to give it a little bit of red on the end. And I'm making it just so it stands out about as long as the bend of the hook is, or the, whatever you call that. See, like I was saying earlier, I don't always have all the right terms for fly tying. But also kind of goes back to my motto about fly tying, which is sometimes you follow a recipe, you do all the things correctly, you end up with a really cool fly. Sometimes you end up with a bunch of crap tied to a hook. And usually the fish will still eat it. All right, so this part is a little bit more kind of high level fly tying trick. So I'm going to take these Peacock herl. I'm going to get them all together. And I'm going to tie these on to the top of the hook like that. And I go to the end there and bend that up so that then I can just come back with my scissors and snip it off where I want it. And I just tie down those tail ends. And I'm going to go back. So what I'm going to do, go back to where my tie-in point was. There. Okay. Now, this stuff is pretty pretty brittle sometimes. It's pretty easy to snap. So I'm going to back this out so you can see a little bit more what I'm doing. So I'm just going to take this thread. I'm holding it out here. I'm going to go back over while holding it. And basically I'm going to tie that thread in as if it's a piece of material on the fly. Just several turns. Go on this side of it also. And then I'm actually going to use this to strengthen these guys. So I want to tie this, I want to use this material all the way up to about here before I tie in my feather, my other feather. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my thread forward to that. Now that that's there, I've got my tied in piece and it's a loop. You see it comes up here this side and goes back down that side. And I'm going to snip one side so that I just have a piece of string. Like that. And while I'm here, and since I've done that, I'm going to just try to strengthen up that piece of string that I just did with a little bit of clear nail polish. That's another part of the fly that I forgot to mention, is an ingredient to this recipe, and that is just regular old clear nail polish. Now I've got this, and I'm going to take these pieces here, and I'm just going to twist these together until they start wrapping over each other. And it's what I'm doing is twisting it around the thread. So now that I've got that, I'm just going to start wrapping it. And I'll keep twisting it, because way up here it's not twisting very good. There we go. Now it's starting to stand up. So these things have, these Peacock herl, they have little tiny feather barbs on them, just like a big feather does. You have the shaft and you have little barbs, and the barbs are the things that are sparkly. And when you wrap them, sometimes you'll get these things and they have really long barbs, and sometimes you get them and they're pretty small. This one is one of the smaller ones, so it's actually not going to be as fluffy as I kind of wanted it to, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. It's still going to look like a bug to the fish, and that's what's important. Just keep going. Unless you're some kind of fly tying purist that says, oh, this fly has to have whatever kind of hackle or whatever kind of herl or whatever, which I don't really aspire to. So, and then all I do is just tie it off, and then cut off the tag ends there. That's that. So that was 3 pieces of that herl. So now all that's left of this is, I'm just going to fluff that tail out a little bit like it's supposed to be. Just kind of go straight out like that. I'm going to tie in this little feather here and get a couple of turns out of it. I don't necessarily want this feather to be incredibly fluffy on the fly, so I'm going to take one side of this off. Just hold it and grab the barbs and pull against the direction they're going. They pull right off. So now I'm going to tie in the butt of this and wrap it 2 or 3 times. Just go in here, tie in that shaft of that feather. Hackle plier, and you just squeeze here, it opens it up. Just reach down and grab. And just gonna do one turn behind, One turn forward. Go ahead and use several turns. So this, it looks like this feather is standing up, but it's not going to be enough to make it stand up on the water like a dry fly would. So it's actually going to kind of look like it's wrong, but it's not really wrong. Just that those aren't laying down kind of like they're supposed to. So I'm going to snip this, pull it out this way and snip it so I don't get my string. If you do get your string, you can just tie the string back in and then finish tying and it'll be fine. The fly will never know the difference. And so I'm holding these back, these barbs. I'm actually going to go backwards with these threads, kind of into that feather a little bit. And that will help it lay down. And now I'm just watching when I'm making my head here. I see some little places where the feather barbs are sticking out through my head, and I'm just trying to get a good layer of thread on there. Good little cone shape. Different fly styles lend themselves to different kinds of heads sometimes. Okay. Got a little bit of a barb sticking out towards the front. Just snip that off. I'm going to come in with my, this is called a whip finish tool. You grab the line coming off of the hook with the hook, and then you wrap this part around that little bump in the back, and then you cross it. So this part here is going to wrap around this and the head of the fly, the eye of the hook, right here. So it's going around itself right there, tying it against the hook. 1, 2, 3. You can just do how many is comfortable for you. And then you slide this way, pop it off. This is a little bit springy. Pop that out, and then as you pull it, it just goes towards the fly. And you can slide it out. And then once you're done with that, you can go in with your feather, or your scissors. Snip that. Okay, and I'll come back with my nail polish. This is just cheap, clear nail polish from Target or Walmart or wherever. Now, I will say the cheapest of the cheap is not always the best. I did a dollar store challenge where I went to the dollar store to pick out fly tying materials and see what I could make. One of the things that I picked was clear nail polish from the dollar store, and it took about 3 hours or 2 hours or something for that paint to set on that fly. It was tacky for a long time. And so that's basically the finished fly, or that is the finished fly. Things you can do to this to make it different would be, it would be a different fly essentially, but you could add a bead, little metal bead head on there. You could add bead chain eyes made out of bead chain, like from a ceiling fan. So you would just cut out 2 of those and lay them over the hook there and make eyes. You could put lead wire underneath before you put the hackle on, and it would, the peacock herl on, and it would give you a fatter body and also make it sink faster. Just depends on how fast your water's moving to how fast you need it to move down in the water column. And then you can also tie a wire to the back of this. So we use the thread to make the hackle, the peacock herl, stronger. You can also do the same thing or follow up by using wire over the top of it as well. You would tie it in here at the tail like we did the tinsel, and you would wrap it backwards versus the you would wrap it backwards against the hurl. So if your hurl is twisting forward this way, you wrap that one backwards this way so that it crosses the other one, and it'll just keep it from popping apart. I think I hit my paint there earlier and made it look a little bit dull, but that's okay. Again, the fish don't really care as long as it looks about the same size and resembles what bugs are in the water at the time. Okay, so that is my fly a night, a fly a day while my wife is away. It's the gray Hackle Peacock. Hope you enjoyed it. Try it out. Not too hard. Have a good night.